give it up to your host, Alex Ketchum! Good evening, everybody, and thank you guys for coming out to Let's Just Say Go Comedy and Ferndale's premier storytelling event. Now, just in case it's your first time here, I want you all to know that unlike most of the shows here at Go Comedy, this is actually not a comedy show. You might hear some funny stories, but this is just a storytelling show. These are all true stories told from the storyteller's perspective, based upon a theme. And this month's theme, if you can't tell by my jacket, is Smitten. Because 'tis the season. So tonight you're going to hear some interesting stories based upon however the storyteller, kind of takes the word smitten and whatever, how they want to twist it and, relate it to their story. Each story is going to be roughly 7 minutes long, and if the storyteller is going a little bit too long, they might hear this sound, which is just, it's a slide whistle, but it's also the international sound of, let's start wrapping it up. So, yeah, but that's you're not in trouble. This is not a contest. You're not going to hit the rating. We have a lot of storytellers tonight. There's going to be some great, great stories I'm really looking forward to. We have some first-timers tonight. Give them a big round of applause. And as is with tradition of Let's Just Say, Smitten, the host will tell a short story, kind of break the ice. So I'm going to, being a newlywed and all. Yeah, very good. I'm going to tell a little story about the person I'm smitten with, my wife, Amber Ketchum. I guess I'll just tell like a general story at the wedding because there's a lot of little things, but she's Jewish and we had a Jewish wedding. I'm not Jewish, I'm a free agent of religion. But it was just really interesting getting to share all those experiences with her. I was lost at times and scared at times, but her being an event planner, a month after the proposal, she had it lined up. She's ready to go. And I've been to very few events that went so smoothly, so she is very good at what she does. There was, we drank wine during the ceremony. There was a lot of Yiddish, or Hebrew, I guess one or both. And there was a chair dance. So we had a very small wedding and only a few people with like mass and strength. And when the MC announced the chair dance, all those said strong men went over to her chair. And I had literally wave people in, like, come on. At the very beginning of this thing, my left ass cheek dropped out. And as you can see, she is having the time of her life. And I am just trying not to pee my pants. Which I think is a good metaphor for relationships. One may be scared and one may be having the time of their life. But I really think that together, you guys can get through it. And I love her very much, and it was a wonderful evening. And tonight's going to be a wonderful evening from a wonderful story, so let's get it started, y'all. Got all my things. All right, our first storyteller is an artist, and she is the founder and creative force behind Wagasm Art. Please give it up for Eugenia Gasman.
I saw him do a handstand, and I knew this is my other half. He was more skinny than trim. He had dark hair, a little bit of facial hair, a little goatee going on. We were at an inpatient psych hospital in Baltimore, I believe, Michigan. I was practically a lifer. I decided to read the side effects of the medicine that was being prescribed, so then refused to take it. So everyone else is like getting checked in and checked out, and I'm just like waiting for a court date. And so this guy, I threw myself at him. I'm like, this is my person. He did share eventually that he was there because his, I think, ex-girlfriend's father called the police, something along those lines. And I was just like smitten. This hospital was so far away, and I was like so angry. I was like so angry with my mom. Like I associated everything negative with her. She would drive for hours to see me, and I would refuse to come see her sometimes. I wanted to leave with this guy. Like, I mean, I wanted to jump over the fence, have him pick me up, and just like ride into the sunset, live happily ever after. And that's not exactly what happened, but I actually did end up leaving with him. Once I got discharged, didn't even tell my family that I was discharged. He and his stepfather, I'm not sure how formal that relationship was, but picked me up in a truck and we drove to Smitten. The house was a one-story house, 2 dogs, a bunch of men. He had his own like room with a mattress on the floor, this big stain, these sheets that didn't fit, definitely not matching. There was also a large reptile that he fed mice to, and I was just so in love. I would lay on the bed and look up at the ceiling and be like, I'm gonna paint floral murals up here. I'm gonna make it so pretty. I remember he'd still be sleeping, and I would look around the room like the Little Mermaid, and I would pick up things and be like, is this trash or something I tried to smoke? And I would walk down the street to the park, right? And I would be smiling, and I could picture myself in my wedding gown, smiling to the guests, making my way through the park, to the dock over the water where we would say our vows. Clearly this is where we're headed, right? And yeah, and we talked about our future. We're gonna buy a trailer. We're gonna live together in a trailer, happily ever after, at the end. And my family tried to extract me, right? Like, I remember my mom and stepfather and grandparents came, and my grandfather, he used the bathroom, and then I went in after him, and there was like pee all over. Like, he must have just been like freaking out. And my grandmother, like, she tried to talk to me. I spit in my grandmother's face. Like, that is how far gone I was in that mental health catastrophe that was my life. I ended up getting checked into another hospital. That year was just in and out. And again, refused to leave with my mom. Again, came back to Smitten. He and I drove together. No, let's rephrase it. We took the Greyhound bus from Ann Arbor to Minneapolis, where I had lived before this whole like getting pulled out of life happened. And you know, we walked into my apartment, which was so beautiful in Minnetonka. It was just like a dream when I moved in. These huge windows looking out over this field, we could see the train going in the distance. We packed what we could into my car, which was also still in Minnesota at that time, and we drove back. Little did I know I didn't have car insurance, just things that I kept track of by that point in my life. My mom, she applied for guardianship. And I was like, you don't like who I'm dating, so you're applying for guardianship? Like, how's that gonna go? And I remember I was at my grandparents', and she told me that the hearing was the next day, and I thought it was like a week away. So here I am going to court in my grandmother's clothes, just like so I could wear something presentable. And we were sitting in this courtroom, it's like probate court for guardianship. I should know since I'm a licensed attorney, right? Even at that point. And one person's getting called after the next, and I'm just sitting there next to my mom, and I'm so angry at her. I'm so angry at her that she's now letting me have this dream life in a trailer with this man who smokes everything he sees. It's all I want, right? And she has a piece of paper with her, and she said, and I knew it was like basically like this ultimatum. I grew up in a world of ultimatums. If you want this, you need to do that, right? So she has this piece of paper, she's like, if you sign this, like, we're leaving. And I was like, and one of the terms on this piece of paper is, you're leaving Smitten, you're moving home. Like, And I signed it. I signed it, so we never even went from the judge. She never got guardianship, but I signed it. I was like, still so angry. And I mean, I remember him calling and being like, I think we should get married. And I asked my stepfather how to do that. You know, like, but he messaged my mom, and I mean, needless to say, we weren't too well matched. It was a long time to any semblance of normal. And I remember more recently, about like 3 years ago, pre-COVID, so like yesterday, 2019. I remember being smitten with someone else, and he said to me, the love you seek is within you. So I felt like totally rejected, right? And it was like only later that I kind of clicked, that's what he's saying, right? So I'll say this, I can't quite wrap my head around still what happens after you're smitten, and if I ever want to go there again.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Our next storyteller is a regular at the local moth events, and she has been a featured storyteller at the Society of Twisted Storytellers. She also produces a monthly comedy showcase at the Wholehearted Winery in New Hudson. Sorry, I'm not originally from Michigan. I still have difficulty with some of the areas. New Hudson, yeah, in New Hudson. And she performs stand-up at one-night stands, Mark Ridley's, and any open mic you can go out and check out. She's very funny, and her next show at the Wholehearted Winery is February 18th, and you can get tickets at winethatgives.com. Please welcome Miss Sarah Young.
First of all, the exact same thing happened at my wedding, Alex, as to my husband, so you're not alone. all the big guys took care of me, and he was left with, I think, my great aunt Mabel or something. That's terrible. Okay. A lot of my story takes place at Michigan State, and I just want to give thanks that when I called that campus home, what happened this week wasn't even a thing to think about, and I want to send out love and light to everyone that's hurting. Yeah. From 1984 to 1987, I thought I was smitten, and in truth, I was enthralled by a Class A narcissist. Yeah, every gift had a tie that cut me away from my true friends and my family, and everything had a price, and it got incredibly worse when I was on the campus of Western Michigan, and in the fall of '86, I moved to Michigan State. And then every weekend was, is he coming up to see me? And I'd have to sit there and just wait to see if he would show up. Or if my weekend to go and see him, then I'd be at a locked door, no idea where he was or when he was going to show up. And I was told time after time that I was good enough for now. And to cope with this, I had this running just monologue in my brain, just telling me how horrible things were, because anything that I could think of was the worst thing that could happen. Anything that would happen had to be better, and that was how I coped with it. And it was just constant and ongoing, and it was just horrible. And in the winter of '87, I came to my senses, and that ended. During this time, though, I met the person that would become my husband 3 times. Yeah. The first time was during winter break of '85, and a friend from grade school was friends. I was still at Western, and she was friends with Ben at Michigan State, and she came into town for winter break, and I had to go pick her up. She came into town with Ben, and I had to go and pick her up at his parents' house, and then she stayed the rest of the time with me. And it was just the strangest deja vu, because their subdivision was very twisty and turny and very confusing, and I knew exactly where I was going. It was just the strangest thing. And I found the house, and it was like I knew where I was. And I picked her up, and she said, I have to let Ben know that, I have all my stuff and I'll see him on campus. Do you mind if we go to where he works? And he was working at a clothing shop in 12 Oaks. So we go there, and she's looking all over for him. And I remember just turning the corner and seeing him putting jackets on a carousel, and it was just this knowing. And I thought, oh, there he is. Just like, you know someone from forever, and you're meeting them in a crowded place, and you turn the corner, and it's like, oh, there you are. And I must have said it out loud, because my friend said, how did you know that was him? And I said, oh, I must have seen his picture at the house, I just picked you up at. And I hadn't seen a picture. It was just this knowing. So that was the first time. And then the second time was the fall of '86, when I had moved to MSU. And at that time, to use a computer, you had to go to the computer lab. And my friend and I both lived off campus, and Ben was still on campus. So we picked him up, and he got my friend into the computer lab. And as we're walking there, he tells my friend that he had finally broken up with his ex, Lisa. And my friend says, oh, really, again? Because apparently this was an ongoing thing. And he says, no, for serious. It's serious this time. I'm not even sleeping with her anymore. And I thought, what an asshole. The third time I met Ben was just after the breakup with my ex. And his best friend was turning 21. And Ben was not 21 yet, so he had pre-gamed quite heavily, and we were all at a bar for the person that would become our best man for his birthday. And Ben was bound and determined to try to make this poor foreign exchange student from Japan, who didn't have a word of English, dance with him. And I thought, what an idiot. What true love is made of, right? But after that, just as a group, we started hanging out. And it was my friend from grade school, and his best friend, and Ben, and we were just a group. And he asked me to go out. And it was just too soon after just the torture of the last 3 years. And I said, I just can't. And he said 4 words. That's okay. I'll wait. And then I spent about a month just going out on random dates. And the best part of the dates, which were terrible, was ditching them and then running out the other door to my place to find Ben to tell him how terrible the dates were. Because I thought, well, that's kind of stupid. And we started going out. That first summer, though, he was a camp counselor up north. And, I've seen Meatballs, and I've seen all the movies, and I know what goes on at camps, right? But the weirdest thing was like, my brain was quiet, and I realized that constant drone that I had of how everything was going to be horrible and how my coping mechanism was not there. And I tried to get it started, because that's what you do. That's how you cope. That's how you exist. And it wouldn't take effect because there was nothing to worry about. And things just went like that. And they weren't fireworks, and there wasn't big gestures. It was just the small things that kept adding up. When he graduated, we came back to the area, to Farmington, and had told our folks that we were moving in together, and we weren't engaged yet. And I told my dad, and I didn't know how I was going to tell my dad, and he just asked me, are you getting a place together? And I said, I don't know. And he says, well, are you moving back home? Like, am I going to the moon? And I was like, no. And he says, right, and you can't afford it by yourself, so where are you guys looking? And I'm like, okay, my dad's not stupid, I need to remember this. And he told his dad, and his dad said, you do plan to marry that girl someday, don't you? So it was his father looking out for my virtue, and that when I realized I was smitten with his family. Yeah, and it was just things like that that just add up to a lifetime, and things aren't always perfect because he's actually quite horrible at giving gifts. It was Christmas time, and I really wanted to get a cat, and he gave me this box, and there was holes punched in it, and it moved, and it meowed, and oh my God, you put a poor cat in this box, what is wrong with you? And I was so excited, and I opened it up, and it was a motorized freaking animal that was motion and sound sensitive. It was a cat. And then he talked, and then it moved, and it meowed, and I'm still mad at him for that. That was decades ago, and I'm still mad at him. But even when we got engaged, our engagement, wasn't, I see on Pinterest and Instagram all these big engagements, right? And ours was sitting there and watching TV, and during a commercial break, he turns to me and says, how do I do this? And I'm like, how do I do what? He goes, if we get engaged, how do I do this? I said, Benjamin, you have got to be kidding me. I never thought I'd have to ask myself to marry me. And he says, well, what do I do? I go, I don't know. You pull a ring out of your ass and you ask me to marry you. I don't, what? And he goes, oh, okay. And the TV show comes back on, and he just goes and watches TV. And I'm sitting there going, what just happened? And then the next commercial break, he reaches next to him into the sofa cushion, and he throws this box on my lap. And he goes, here. And I'm like, what is it? And he goes, open it. I'm like, I'm not touching this. What is in the box? He says, Sarah, it's a ring. And I said, if you're joking, you're a dead man. What is in the box? I'm not touching this thing. So he opened it, and it was this ring, and we were engaged. But it's not this big romance. It's not this. It just isn't. But it's unending support. No matter what I want to do. I want to leave corporate America and a steady paycheck, and I want to be an artist. And I want to go and take the stage and be a stand-up comic. And I want to make a recipe and get it licensed and start making it. And it's never, you're crazy, it's always, what can I do to help? So, and in things just, even with, life. He doesn't talk a lot about, feelings and things like that. And we spent our 30s trying to have kids, and it just wasn't working out. And I was a very different person, and for just medical reasons, it would have been so high risk. As soon as we announced, I would have been bedridden for the entire thing. And it wasn't working, and I was frantic. And he said to me, and I very likely wouldn't even have made it. And he said to me, if we could have a kid, it would be fantastic. But if I have to choose between a baby we don't have and you, I'm going to pick you.
Aww.
And it's been things like that. Just little things. There's a restaurant that he enjoys. And I commented that we hadn't been there. And I said, why don't we ever go there? And he says, well, you have issues eating when you go there. And so I don't go there. And it's things like that where I come first. And that is how, next month actually, for 37 years next month, I know what it is to truly be smitten. Thank you.
was amazing. Our next storyteller is a therapist and a drummer, which might be the coolest two words I've ever had to put together. They've had plenty of time on stage, performing music and doing improv with the Metro Detroit Improv. But they are still new to storytelling. So let's give them a big welcome as they gain some more experience in this new form. Please welcome Miss Jamie Lynn.
So, I have been struggling with what the hell story to tell for this. And then I got one in my head, I'm like, all right, we're sticking with it. It's been a part of my being, 37 years of fuckery. It's been a part of my being since I was 14. So I'm gonna share it. I have not practiced it, because again, part of my being. So, when I was 14, I got bit with that save the world bug thing, and I thought I could. So I tried. But I was involved with one of the local youth groups because they did a lot of volunteer work and they had a band. So I was like, yep, I'll go to that youth group. And then they started doing mission trips to Peru. And I was like, oh, that's very cool. And the thing that I liked about it is we were working like hands-on with these boys, singing songs at night, eating with them, building shelters for them during the day while they were doing other stuff. So it wasn't as much like, hey, you want to be a Christian? And it was more so like, hey, you want to sing a song? Hey, you want to be friends? Hey, you want to like experience what it is to be accepted? This is driving me crazy. And while I was there, it was the weirdest thing because I was 14 when I started going. My mom was like, fuck all that. So I was by myself with the rest of the youth group. They're, you know, the kids, the family there. And these kids were our age. Like, talk about understanding privilege, right? So I bonded with this one boy. I know this is starting out weird. But I bonded with this one boy, Jose Luis. And he was my age, maybe a couple years older than me, actually. And he was at the shelter for a few years. He was like one of the mentor boys. And like I said, every night we would make music, we would sing, we would play games. They would teach us their games, we would teach them our games. We would constantly kick each other's butts, be really loud and obnoxious while doing it. And then I noticed that Jose Luis was kind of like making eyes. And I was sneaking glances all week. I'm not gonna lie. I was boy crazy since I was in 3rd grade. I was that kid in 4th grade. I have my little pictures, like your school photos. And I'm like writing little messages. I love you, what do you do? Here you go. I love you, what do you do? Here you go. Like just passing them out to all the boys. I'm like, one of them is gonna check yes. So I was like, yeah, boy crazy from the freaking womb. So of course, I was like, oh yeah, okay. And one of the cool things is that our group did like all the dishes, we did all the cleaning afterwards, we did all the everything. And the boys would come and help because of course it ended up in a water fight and it was fun and all that stuff. So it slowly evolved over the 2 weeks to Jose Luis taking extra long to do the dishes. And then Jose Luis and, Juan Carlos would, I couldn't make this up if I tried, would take extra long and then hang out with me and my friend Betsy. Betsy was involved, there's always a Betsy involved. Would hang out with me and our friend Betsy, and then we would go for walks. The Presbyterians are so liberal, we were not being monitored. It's like, you know what happens at camp? You really want to know what happens at church camp? What about church camp overseas? Church camp overseas unmonitored. I was having fun. evolved over the 2 weeks to us going to the ocean and sitting on the bluffs and watching the waves. This evolved to teaching each other songs. I fell in love with Manel. He introduced me to that, and I'm holding him, right? I see you too, like you all are nodding a lot over here. I'm like, I gotta talk to you too. But falling in love with Manel, it evolved to really broken English and trying, in Spanglish, trying so hard to learn each other's languages. And as cliche as it sounds, realizing we didn't need it, you know, and teaching each other our stories, which is heartbreaking, you know. That's the part that I won't share as much of. But these boys have been through hell and back. And again, being the same age, it's like, all right, well, I just came from my 2-bedroom ranch in Dearborn and have no issues, some daddy issues, but other than that, like, so the empathy bug was planted real soon. So this is why I was late today. I had to get my prop. The 2 weeks literally evolved. I had a nickname, Gringa Loca. I shit you not. And it was amazing. So the cool thing is these boys, you build a relationship and they remember you the next year. So you build a relationship, you build a bond that then, y'all are nodding and it's making me cry because you do. You build a bond, they remember you the next year. Here's where it does get a little sad. So end of that 2 weeks. Well, no, we're gonna go. I don't know how the hell he came up with it, but he got me a bracelet. And it's just this very simple Peruvian sort of squiggle. He didn't, there was no significance, I mean, not like that kind of significance to it. But let me tell y'all, I'm 35, have ADHD out the ass, and I've managed to keep this since I was 14. So that tells you something. I was, right. And you know, that does deserve a round of applause. So what does that tell you? So I shit you not. And then the cool thing is that he actually did write me letters. Like, we actually did keep in touch for a little while when I got back. Now, I'm going to tell you the sad thing first and then end with the ooh thing. So the sad thing is, a lot of these boys, it took years and lots and lots and lots of love for them to be convinced, we know how this feels, right? To admit that they were worth love, shelter, care, right? So a lot of them ended up going back out. It was what they were used to. We're used to whatever we're familiar with, and sometimes that's hell, but it's comfortable because it's familiar. So the next year, he was not there. No one knew where he was, no one knew what happened to him, and I did not hear from him again. I hope the best, fear the worst, but I have kept in touch with some of the other boys. Technology is amazing, and so the last time I went, I would have been 19, and Facebook started getting popular and open to everyone when I was in my mid-20s, and then I started getting friend requests from Gerardo, from Juan Carlos, from these boys that we had made music with years and years and years ago. So that was very cool. And now for the very quick, like, this was also how I learned I like it a smidge rough. I kid you not. It wasn't all that. It wasn't all that. I was very naive. I was actually very naive. I had a tongue ring and I had no idea why people were like, oh. I'm like, what? Like, it's cool. They're like, yeah, it's cool. I'm like, why are you talking like that? Like, I had no idea. So this is like G-rated. I like it rough, okay? 14-year-old, why are you, I don't know. But I will never forget. I bought this scarf. And this was one of those, we're sneaking out after we did the dishes, we're hanging out in some little nook and like trying to flirt with each other with very little words in common. And he looks at me, he grabs my scarf, kind of does one of these push me against the wall and just starts kissing me. And I'm like, oh, okay, I like that apparently. So I learned a lot of things that year. And thank you, Jose Luis.
Thank you, Jamie. I've been abroad and learned a lot of things too. Our next storyteller is a good friend of mine and is part of an improv group, Your Weird Cousin, and is very funny and is a very talented storyteller. You can catch her at the Moths, and she is most importantly the driving force behind this very show. Please welcome Miss Natalie Walker.
I'm gonna bring down the vibes. Good evening.
Good evening.
So I've been privileged to be able to have traveled some places in the world and this very beautiful country we live in. And every time you go to a place, you always think, wow, could I live here? And you kind of fall in love with it a little bit, right? And then you do a Google search and then you're like, oh, cost of living, I don't know if I can find a job here, blah, blah, blah. So you end up not, and you're coming back to Michigan. And so Michigan has always been my place. I have lived in other places, but Michigan I always love. There are only two places in my lifetime so far that I have considered places that I absolutely love, and they're both in this state. The first one is where I currently live, and the second one is about 100 miles from here on the banks of the Red Cedar. And now I was already planning on talking about this because I think you can be and fall in love with a place, and it's a place that I have actually, my whole, like part of my major identity came from that institution in that city. And so I already planned on talking about it, and then when this all happened on February 13th, I debated with myself if I should actually even talk about it. Now, I'm not going to talk about the horrific events. We are dealing with that, we are processing that, we are healing that, and we are in events like this that can talk about humanity and hope, and that's where I want to stay. And I want to stay within the humanity and the hope because that's how we get through things like this, okay? What I want to talk about is why I have a love letter to East Lansing and MSU. So I remember getting that acceptance letter in the mail. I still have it, and don't do the math, but it's a long time ago, and I still have it in my stuff. And for me, that letter, and some people have already heard some similar things in stories I've told, but for me, that letter was a ticket to freedom. I lived in a household that wasn't fantastic, it was abusive, I don't want to get into that. For me though, Michigan State was the way that I could be myself for the first time, make my decisions for the first time, be the person that I want to be the person that sees the world in a more happy place and know that I can bring, make an impact in the world. And so that's what I brought when I took that letter. I turned 18 on my very first day of college. Again, don't do the math. And I had my mother make me a cake. And I purposely decided to live and go blind and not know my roommate and not know anybody because even though there's a lot of people I went to high school with, I was trying to create a whole new me and what that looked like. Because I wanted to leave my hometown behind me. So my mother gets me a cake. My parents were divorced. She's a beautiful, lovely lady. In fact, she's not here tonight, but she usually comes to the shows. Anyway, she gives me this cake, and I'm awkwardly walking around, and I got placed in an upperclassman dorm, and there's guys and girls that live across the hall, and that was a big deal. And I remember walking around with this cake going, hi, I'm Natalie. I just turned 18 today. Do you want some cake? And they're like, no, here's a beer. And that was my introduction to Michigan State. I still remember going to my first tailgate and learning the fight song and understanding what that meant and what that meant to go to the games. I remember getting my first job at the coffee shop and not knowing what was going on, and I remember the boss stole my tips. Anyway, but I remember that. I remember my very first love actually came from Michigan State. My very first college boyfriend what was really funny, ironically enough, is that it happened right around Valentine's Day. A bunch of my friend group all got broken up with, or they broke up. Everybody all of a sudden got single real quick right around Valentine's Day. And rather than being upset about it, I was like, oh, we're gonna have an anti-Valentine's Day party. And I found the cheesiest Valentine's Day horror film there is. It's called St. Valentine's Day. I don't know, it's horrible. And got snacks and was ready to go. Just so happened that the night before, I went to a party, and there was this guy, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm making this cool anti-Valentine's Day party, and I'm just so enthusiastic about it. I didn't realize he was actually trying to talk to me about the anti-Valentine's Day party, and he actually invited himself to come. So it turns out I actually had a date to my own we ended up dating for over 2 years, and with that, unfortunately, that also means first love also means first ultimate heartbreak, which was tragic, but it's also part of those things that you learn, right? I remember my father passing away while I was in college, and I had a whole group of people wrapping their arms around me when that happened. I remember when I turned 21 and I had people coming from all over the country come and see me because I wanted to make sure I had a good 21st birthday. I did. I still have pictures for that. I remember getting volunteering at this crisis line. I've mentioned that before, and that crisis line is what showed me all walks of life of people. Is I grew up in a pretty homogenetic suburb of Detroit, and it was great because I got well versed in that everybody can be who they are, they can be who they, and it just really opened my eyes to being like who I want to be and how I want to accept everyone, and that's how I live my life. And those friendships that I made at that crisis line are people that I'm still friends with. The many additional years later, I've been the maid of honor in their weddings and the godmother to their babies. I remember getting my first apartment with my next boyfriend, and he and I got our first apartment, and it was very exciting, and I was so nervous to tell my mom that, I was going to live with a boy and hope she was going to be okay with it, and her being like, Natalie, your dad and I live together, your sister has lived with someone, I'm not worried about it. I'm like, thank you, hippie mom, great, love it. I remember though, forgetting that I left a pizza box in the oven, and then that totally went up in flames, and I remember us both looking at the flames going, oh, what do we do? And I remember at Christmas, my mother thought she was cheeky and got me 3 fire extinguishers, so I'm always prepared now. So it's times like these where I think about that. Oh, I also remember, and I've talked about that, is that I graduated, and I still actually even lived there after I graduated until I ended up moving to the other town, Ann Arbor, which I absolutely love too. It's times like these where I think about all the community and all the opportunities that that school and that institution and that gave me. And so that is where I wanted to say, thank you, East Lansing. I love you. Good night.
Thank you for sharing, Natalie, and thank you for all that you do for this very show. Thank you very much. Now, our next storyteller is an award-winning playwright. Some of you know that already. Okay. I thought that was going to be a little mystery. He is also a talented stage performer and improviser with Metro Detroit Improv. Telling a story on stage. Let's give a big round of applause, Mr. Jason Robbins.
I am pretty sure that I am not the only one in this room who is terrible at telling if someone is flirting with you. Like, most of the time, I don't even know if I'm flirting with someone. So if I'm accidentally flirting, like right now on stage, afterwards, then I'll be like, what, I was flirting? And then you're gonna probably second guess yourself. It's gonna be really awkward, it'll be great. So, one of these awkward situations that I found myself in, it was many years ago, a long time ago, I worked at a store called Media Play, and thank you, old people. And I was ending my shift, and we had a really good employee discount. I was at the register getting either anime or CDs or something. And as I finish up and I'm getting ready to head out the door, the cashier asks me if I'd like to go to lunch with her. So I say, I'm not hungry, and walk out the door. So, fast forward about 5 years, and I'm talking about the fact that I used to work at Media Play, and as I'm talking, I suddenly stop, and I'm like, oh my God, she was asking me out! So, yeah, I'm a little bit slower at that. And, yeah, she was just too subtle is what the issue is. But yeah, even when people are direct, you'd think I'd be able to get the hints, but I'm not even good in that circumstance. So, several years later, I had worked the midnight shift at 7-Eleven, and this guy comes in, and he looks like he had a rough day, looked very worn out and stuff, and he makes his purchase and everything. He comes up to the register, I ring him up, I hand him his bag, I say, have a great night, and he says, I love you too. And so, we're standing there, we both just stop, and I'm like, okay, so this guy just confessed his love for me. What do I do? Do I get half of his Twix now? Do we split the bag of Doritos? I'm not sure what we do here. So he ended up walking out, didn't say anything else. And would you believe I never saw him again? Never came back. But yeah, I guess romance in the workplace was not in the cards for me. Which I'd like to make a public service announcement now, use my platform up here now most people probably, I thought most people knew this, but apparently I need to say it, LinkedIn is not a dating app. So, yeah, I found myself in that situation. I currently, now keep in mind, LinkedIn is really good for, it's business and business-related scams. That's what you use LinkedIn for, not romance scams. That is what Meetup is for. But I ended up getting this message earlier this week on LinkedIn from someone whose profile describes her as business people. And she messaged me saying that she would like to, quote, create friendships for business and life. Parentheses, I am not a headhunter, end quote. So, I have no clue how this ends because I'm still currently going through it, and I could stop it at any time, but this is really interesting. I want to figure out where this is going. What's going to happen?
I want to copy your profile.
So yeah, she's messaging me, and every day so far she's been asking if I'm eating well and talking about the fact that she's widowed and wanting to know if I'm single and these things. So again, I don't know where it's going, and the eating well thing, it's I'm not eating well, but I'm making it seem like I am. So, I'm just waiting, I'm on the outside watching what's going to happen, oh no, Jason, don't do it, this could be a scam, you might, don't fall in love, Jason, don't do it. So, yeah, I'm still waiting to see how that turns out, watching from the outside. It's kind of like a dream, where you watch yourself in your dream. Now, you could step in and change anything about what's happening, but you choose to just watch and see, you could make it good. But you're no, wait, let's see what happens here. A really interesting disaster. So, yeah, like most people, they have control over their dreams and they just don't use it. Like at any point, you could make a cake appear or a bagel or something, and most of us just don't do that. So I know a lot of people have like romantic dreams and sex dreams, but not me. Those are not the dreams I end up having. The dreams I end up having, they are very vivid. But an example of some of the dreams I've recently had, one of them, I walk out into the kitchen from my bedroom, and I open up a cabinet, and I grab some soy sauce. But it's not even La Choy. It is like a generic brand of the generic brand. It's just this like plain white label, and it's light soy sauce, so it's not even like a full flavor. And that was the dream. And then I had another dream recently where I'm making toast and I burn it. But it's not even comically burnt. It's like slightly darker than what I intended. And I was making it for my son in the dream, and so I approach him later in the day, and I'm like, did I accidentally burn your toast? And like trying to figure out, because these dreams were so vivid, I didn't know if it was a real thing that happened. So not too long ago, I was at a friend's house, and we were cuddling on her couch, and we had fallen asleep, and it was actual cuddling, wasn't like, I'm not saying cuddling when it was something else, it was, we were fully clothed type cuddling, and fell asleep, and I start to wake up a little bit, like I'm in this process of waking up, and she must have noticed like my eyes opening slightly, and she was like, oh, you're so sweet and affectionate when you're sleeping. And I have no clue what I did, but apparently she liked it. So she's probably sitting there, you know, looking at me as I'm coming to, wondering, oh, what's Jason dreaming about? It must be about me. Oh, I wonder what we were doing in his dreams. And so I finally come to fully, and I leap to my feet, and I just like jump out of the couch, and I'm standing there staring for a second, and I'm thinking, was that just a dream? Or do I need to go buy lemon juice? Thank you.
So our next storyteller has been in the business for about 50 years. She's been an actress, an agent, and has been working as a casting director for the past decade. Has a couple of books on Amazon. One of them is Asking Advice from a Casting Director, and a couple of children's books. Has written some screenplays and a sitcom, which she hopes to get produced before she kicks the bucket. What? Sorry. I was doing so good. Please welcome to the stage Miss Janet Pound.
It's so bright, I can't see anyone back there. Anyway, the stories I can tell you are true. The very first memory I have is of being smitten. And it was with this cute boy. He had like this shock of red hair and this big, beautiful grin. And he had a big tablet here and a big tablet here. And he was known as Speedy Alka-Seltzer. I had it bad. I remember I could hear the TV on, and I would say, Petey, how could you, Petey, how could you, and I'd run into the living room. And there was a song that went along with it. It was Pop, Pop, Fizz, Fizz. Oh, what a relief it is. You're all probably too young to remember this. This was before the Pillsbury Doughboy, right? So I would run into the living room. He swept me off my feet, which was easy to do because I was really only 2 years old. And I would go up to the TV and I would kiss it. My brothers would get mad because they were so afraid that they weren't going to be able to continue to see their Lone Ranger. And 2-year-olds can be fickle, because after that I went right on to my next crush, which was in kindergarten, 1957, St. Luke's, Flint, Michigan. And his name was Marty Jarbo. And he had a bow tie, and I was besotted with the boy in the bow tie. It didn't matter that he had buck teeth, and he had bad hair, and he had big ears, but I loved that tie. So he invited me to his house for his kindergarten party, and I was so excited, and I came in there, and there was Jackie Zale. What is she doing here? I didn't know I had competition. I thought, well, she was only 5, but she already played piano, and she had recitals, and she had a pretty pink dress, and I was one of 6 kids and didn't have much of anything, but I had bought him a slinky, and it was brand new then, and I thought, that'll be it. So he opens up the gift, and then he opens up the gift from Jackie, and she gave him a slinky. I thought, oh. But I found out on the way home from school, and this was when kindergartners could walk home from school, and it was safe, and we were standing on the street, and when we crossed the street, he would have to go to the right, and I would go to the left. And he turned and he kissed me on the cheek. Woo. And he ran, and a car came and screeched. He was fine, but he kept running. But I was left behind, and I was just shook up and smitten, and I thought, he picked me. But thinking of it now, I'm like, how do I know he didn't do that to Jackie Zale? I don't know. So then, my next crush was in 7th grade, and his name was Mark Holdreth. And I used to walk with him when he would deliver his papers, and I was taller than him at the time. So he would have me walk in the street, and he would walk on the curb, so he would be the same size. And he tried to teach me things about the world, and I still didn't get it. He said to me once, now mind you, this is 7th grade, so I think we were 12. He said he had passion for me. Did I know what that meant? I said, no. He said, well, go home and look it up in the dictionary. So I did, and the next day he said, did you read? I go, I still don't get it. But he was my first kiss. He gave me his ID bracelet. I don't think they do that anymore. That meant you were going steady. It's like this chain bracelet that has their name on it. And I could tell he was kind of upset. I thought, he just asked me to go steady. Why is he upset? And he was having me go like this. Well, it didn't fall off my wrist. Apparently on his wrist it did fall off. So that I wasn't happy about that one. So my first kiss was with him in the basement of Sandra Jastrzemski's house. And it was in her dad's workshop, not romantic. And I was sitting on his lap, and I was looking at him, and I thought, he had a purple grape Kool-Aid mustache, and his dad had just cut his hair really near, and I thought, couldn't you do better? And then I thought, no, because I loved him. I was smitten with him. So I went away to camp, and he would do this thing where I talked to him on the phone, and my mom, she knew what was going on. He was much more worldly than I was, and we only had one phone in the house, so she would hear my side of the conversation. And I remember him telling me he had this dream, and we were stuck by the side of the road, and the rain was pouring down, and we had to find some shelter. We found this cave, and he's going on, and I go, I don't know what he's getting to, but I'm sure he was having a fun dream that I didn't understand. My mom kind of heard what was going on, so she called him a little pissant. I told him he called her that or whatever. So anyway, at the end of our conversations, when we were talking on the phone, he would say, I love you, and I'd say, well, me too. I would never use the L word, but I'd always say, me too. So I went away to camp for 2 weeks, CYO camp, and I was so excited to get home and to, talk to him on the phone, and he called me up, and he said, do you still love me? And I said, yes. And he said, well, I don't still love you. It's like, whoa. Well, rumor got out, and the next day I heard the doorbell ring, and I went to it, and I opened it up, and there was Dick Ferguson, and he was in the 8th grade, and coming up behind him was Mark Holdreth, who decided playing the field like he thought he was going to do wasn't as grand as he thought. So I had to pick, which. So I went with Dick, the older boy, and we remained, Mark and I remained friends. We ended up going to the prom together just as friends. And when I got married at 19, he actually played in the Hootenanny band at my wedding. And years later, when my mom passed away at 95, I'm walking through the funeral home and I'm looking at all this sprays of flowers and I'm taking the cards out, and there's one that says, "From the little pissant." My mother would have loved it. It was so sweet. So, jump ahead. Maybe 2 months ago, he was in town with his wife, and I had them for dinner. Now, mind you, his kids were 4 when my kids were 25. But we remained friends, and we had the most amazing time. It's the only kind of gathering like that you can have when you've had a friendship like that for 60 years. So anyway, that night my stomach wasn't feeling that great, and my husband came in with a glass of water and Alka-Seltzer. And I dropped it in, and I was thinking, plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is to still be smitten with the man that I married 51 years ago.
Thank you for sharing. That was awesome. Now I have the Alka-Seltzer song. But that was your first time, right? Did that just say? Second? Okay. Well, please come back and do it at 3rd, 4th, 5th, because that was wonderful. Our next storyteller, this will be their second appearance at Let's Just Say. They were born in Ann Arbor, but lived in Colorado for 21 years. The Rocky Mountain State, home of the Denver Broncos. I love the Denver Broncos. They recently made their way back to Michigan and are performing stand-up. Once again, this is their second time. Please welcome Finn St. John.
I'm going to do a little rewriting. It's necessary. It's for all of our benefit. Here we go. Okay, I'm kind of nervous. Hello, Ferndale. So, I thought Smitten was kind of an enchanting topic. And it's kind of like cutesy ideas I thought of. And for fun, for inspiration, I decided to look up the word smitten. And I found some definitions I was not aware of. So we have the having suddenly started to like or love something or someone very much. Strongly influenced by someone or feeling the effects of something. But it's also the past participle of the word to smite. That takes it in an entirely different direction. To smite, to hit someone forcefully or have a sudden, powerful, or damaging effect on someone. To attack or affect suddenly and injuriously. I'm sort of like taking it all in. There is one specific person that comes to mind when I take up all of those definitions into one. Also, this is equally terrifying as it was last month. So, I've had a very complicated relationship with a particular person in my life, someone I've known pretty much my entire life. And when I say complicated, I mean more like toxic and abusive. This person would often tell me how much they hated me, what a worthless piece of garbage I was. If I did anything wrong, I would be berated for it. If I did anything right, they would find fault with it. And it really wasn't a great headspace for me to be in around this person. And honestly, I think logistically, it would be challenging to file a restraining order against yourself. But that's kind of what ended up needing to happen. I have a memory from being in kindergarten and feeling like I absolutely hated myself to my innermost core, and that I did not want to be here anymore. And I learned this. The environment I grew up in was not ideal. It was very abusive. You think of a type of abuse that was happening, and I'd actually learned to hate myself as a method of protection, to protect myself emotionally. And you know things are going superbly when learning to hate yourself is actually an adaptive strategy, right? Things are going super well, and I was really not having a great time. And that continued through my entire life. I actually thought everyone hated themselves. I really did. I thought everyone hated themselves, and that some people were just better at it than others. And it wasn't until my mid-20s I learned that you actually weren't supposed to hate yourself. It was news to me. And I thought, no, this is working just fine. You know, that might work for you, but this is how we do business here. And the idea of like, the suggestion that I might show myself love made me angry. It really, really angry. And anger felt like a very unsafe emotion for me. Growing up, anger was expressed violently, like either emotionally violently, physically violently, violent. Anger felt dangerous, so the safest thing for me to do, I learned as a kid, was to turn all of my anger inward. And that was great. And so in my 20s, when I learned you weren't supposed to hate yourself, that made me angry, and I turned that inward. And I continued to hate myself for another 15 years. Fast forward to my late 30s, I was starting to have some trouble physically, like some medical problems. Kind of a cascade of like all systems fail kind of situation, like just tons and tons of medical problems. And I was in a tremendous amount of physical pain. I was used to being in a lot of emotional pain. That was just like baseline. But the physical pain was a new addition, and it was quite welcome, really, because you know you want to mix it up. You know, you don't want to have all of your pain eggs in one basket. You know, it's dull that way. And but really, being in that much physical pain forced me to stop and look at and recognize that okay, the way I've been living really wasn't working, and I was just slowly killing myself from the inside out. And I had been suicidal my entire life. I wanted to kill myself every day. And I really tried hard not to do that. I thought I want to be, you know, I didn't want my mom to get that news. There were a couple of mishaps. Where I did try to take my own life twice. The second one, I really went for broke with that one. Go big or go home. And I shouldn't be here, really. I don't know how I survived that. And I got into a very dark place. And when I was in my mid-30s, I moved back to Michigan, very much at ground zero, from where everything started. And I was forced to face it, to face everything that had kind of, like the environment that had created this internal state in me. I always thought, like, you just be born, I was born suicidal. No one is born suicidal, and no one is born hating themselves. I really believe that. And the idea of letting my self-hatred go was terrifying to me because it was something I was exceptional at. And it became an integral part of my identity, is what it felt like. It was terrifying for me to try to do anything differently. But I was in a heap on the floor, in a tremendous amount of pain. I couldn't move, and I was thinking, now might be a good time to reflect on my life choices and figure out, like, maybe we should try to do things differently. And it wasn't easy. I discovered a trauma recovery group. This wasn't the first. I tried many. This one was different. This one was very, very different. And I learned tools in that group to how to like redirect those thoughts. Those thoughts that I have that just like beat the hit out of myself every day, all day, on a good day. That's if I was being kind. To stop doing that, how to stop doing that. And it has not been easy and it has not been pretty, but I have made a lot of progress with that. And I've now, I've been looking into forms of creative self-expression. I've been doing an art class. And I've actually, in the last almost 4 months, I've been doing stand-up comedy, which is insane. I'm often clapping if I ever don't have a heart attack before. But I could never, ever, ever, ever have done anything like stand-up comedy if I still hated myself. It would be dangerous for me. Some of the material, some of the places I go with my material would be very, very dangerous for me to do if I still hated myself. And so I've learned to come out of that and to be in my internal landscape. I feel like a tourist a lot of times now in my own internal landscape. And oftentimes I wonder, like, what timeline are we even on anymore? I'm not sure. It's not the one we started off at, because what I'm doing now with my life feels positive. Like I've never had a positive direction that I felt good. And what was one of the definitions of smitten? It was having suddenly started to like or love something or someone very much. And I don't know, I think on any given day I hover between like a little bit above a tolerance and maybe like take it under careful advisement and maybe I might like myself. I don't know, baby steps. But I've been moving forward and my internal landscape is no longer this horrific, toxic, constant, abusive language. And I can say, I think I'm kind of smitten with that. I'm sort of like that kind of brain. If I screw up, I just acknowledge what happened. I've learned to show kindness to myself. I've learned to show grace to myself. And that is an absolute miracle. It's not, I never thought I would be able to change the programming that really had been installed for me by the environment I grew up in. I thought I was born suicidal and born hating myself. No. And it's very possible to heal from those things. I feel like now I am just starting to try to figure out like who I'm actually supposed to be. And that person was always in prison, in this prison of self-hatred. I could never move forward from that. I could never get out of that prison. And so finally now in my 40s, starting to figure that out and kind of explore where I want to go with my life. And for the first time, I'm sort of like tentatively optimist, maybe, about that, instead of just wanting to die every single day of my life. And I'd say that is a positive change. I can say that.
Woo!
That was amazing. That was wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us. That was very powerful. Our next storyteller at 19 was a published writer. Has been recently commissioned by Ohio Humanities to research, write, and perform a living monologue by Amelia Earhart. So it's way more accomplished than yours truly. And is also going to be doing a Planet Ant sketch show on the dates of March 10th, 11th, 17th, and 18th. The name of the show is Dream Train, and you can find those tickets at the Planet Ant website, or you can buy them when you walk up. But please check that out. And please welcome to the stage, Natalie Phelps.
already when I was 5 years old. Fun fact, I'm slightly dyslexic. So I had trouble actually like learning to read and write, but I love stories. So I remember the first story that I wrote, it was right after I got done with kindergarten, and it was going to be summer break, and I was, I was like almost 5 years old, and I remember I sat down and I just started putting like letters on the page. And my brother, who's like 9 years older than me, like went and was just like told on me, like tattled, and like told my mom, was like she's not even like writing anything. She's writing letters down. She says she's writing a story, but she's just writing letters down. And my mom like literally, I remember my mom like literally looking at my brother, going, "She's quiet." I am cooking dinner right now. And your sister, for the first time since she came out of my body, is quiet. Just let her do her thing. So when I do these things, I write things down. That's my, if I go and I talk openly, maybe I'll get better at it, but it's just like a flying squirrel. Topic will be completely off, and so I stick with the written word. Notice you can it's like 24 font. Like that's how good my eyeballs were. So I tell stories this way. When I was growing up, I never liked boys my own age. The boys in my neighborhood were all freckled with buck teeth and salad bowl haircuts. Spent most of their time pasturing girls, pulling pigtails, and farting. Lots of farting. When I was young, I couldn't see past these defining qualities. If I was going to fall in love, I was going to fall in love with somebody not like the smelly boys, smelly, farty boys. I was going to fall in love with someone who had class, dignity, someone who had great hair, someone who had strong opinions about wine and art, someone who had rock toes, an exposed brick in their apartment, somebody like that. Someone, and I formed these opinions and these are concrete opinions, unbreakable opinions, at the right bold age of 8. In reality, these are standards that were a recipe for loneliness, because the reality is that all of the male species fart. They never stop. They come out of the womb. They are born. They fart. They live. They fart. They die. It's what happens. And you know what? We do too. Girls, but the reality is, we do too. We've just been socialized. We've been socialized differently. We've been told, just to do tiny little toots all throughout the day. Whereas, like, guys, it's just like. These differences I didn't really understand at the age of 8, but I had formed concrete opinions that were a recipe for loneliness, because it's just not, I didn't have a sense of reality at the age of 8. And I blame all of this on Pierce Brosnan. Oh, God. I mean, seriously, how old is he? But still, God. Oh. He had the hair. He had the suits, he had the look. He could just walk up to a bar and just be like, and a girl. And that's how films were written in the 90s. GoldenEye ruined me forever. After watching that movie, I never looked at boys the same way again. No one could compare to 007's swagger. The cars, the little gun. Like, you gotta be secure to have a gun that's... Well, actually, Pierce Brosnan's gun's a little bit bigger, but the original 007 had, like, the tiniest gun. Like, you gotta be secure in yourself to have a gun that small. So, no guys, no little boys could compare to my idea of what a man should be, of what it meant to be attractive, except for the guy that lived 3 houses down from me. He had dark, wavy hair. He wore a brown leather bomber jacket. I don't know whether it was real or not. I never had the courage to get that close to him, but I imagine that it smelled amazing. So he was a total dreamboat, but genuinely a nice person, which is can be rare. There was one little problem with this. He was 20 and I was 8. Okay. So age was more than just a number in this situation. Okay, age was a jail sentence. So also, along with this, another problem was that he had no idea I existed, which was normal. Okay. I, on the other hand, noticed every little thing about him, which was creepy. I was a tiny creeper. High standards. I was an 8-year-old girl hiding in the bushes with standards up to here. What I was looking for. Yet, in reality, I'm covered in twigs and should probably go home. Okay, so one day in the middle of the winter, I was running around completely unsupervised, as one did back in the day. And over a foot of snow had fallen the night before, which meant we had a snow day. The neighborhood was overrun with children. There was laughing and screaming and throwing snowballs and getting your tongue stuck on a metal pole and all of that stuff. The carnage was beautiful. It was beautiful carnage. All of the kids were making snowmen in their yards. And I decided that I was going to build the largest snowman in the world. Okay? Not like the sad, puny snowman that the koshers had next door. The one where they didn't stick the carrot deep enough into the snowman's face, and as it got warmer, and just sort of the snowman that I was going to build was going to be massive. It was going to be, like, in my 8-year-old brain, like 3 times the size of the Statue of Liberty. So I started building the base of the snowball by the main base of it, a big part of it. I was going to roll it along the unshoveled sidewalk. And I began rolling this ball at the very beginning of the neighborhood and was determined not to stop until I got to the very end of the block. When I first formed the snowball, it was easily fit into the palm of my hand, but as I rolled it across the sidewalk, it accumulated more and more mass. With each house that I passed, it became heavier and harder to roll until I was halfway through the neighborhood. At that point, it was unmovable. Okay? It was like a family member that is a Trump supporter, just unmovable. No. No matter how hard I rammed my tiny twig body against this once ball, now boulder, it would not budge. I looked around to see if I could, maybe get some help. Maybe please, something bigger than me. To my horror, I was 3 houses down from my house. The man of my dreams would be pulling into the neighborhood only to discover that the boulder that nearly killed Indiana Jones was blocking the driveway. So I panicked and I tried to find a possible solution. I tried melting it. I tried, I got like a cup of tea, tried anything to try to move this thing. I was so embarrassed. I tried to lever it with a shovel. Nothing worked. Nothing worked to move this big boulder that I had made. Side note, Archimedes is a bitch. An unprincipled man. That was a I'm a nerd. So soon it was dark, and my hotness, my flame, was pulling into the neighborhood. I hid in a snow fort that my friend Andrew had built, and I must say it was nice, very spacious. I was breathing heavy. It felt like the whole world's atmosphere was crushing down on me. So The car stopped in front of the driveway. The guy from 3 houses down emerged from the '76 Chevy Nova like a vision from a Renaissance painting. He stared blankly at the boulder and then, to my delight, threw his coat off and started heaving. And all of the pushing and pulling and sweating ignited my tiny heart in a way that I was too young to fully understand. Once the boulder had been moved, he pulled into the driveway, and I swore to the stars that were starting to show up in the sky that I would never, ever, ever, ever again do anything to annoy this guy, ever, ever again. 6 months later, I was riding my bike around the neighborhood. Summer was in full effect, and when summer's in full effect, you can smell that. It's like a damp sweetness, and you just feel more energized. It compels you to laugh and to sing and to play and to skip and to do things you haven't done in 6 months, and you go, oh, wow, I haven't moved that part of my body in 6 months out. So I was out playing, as one does, and soon the sun was beginning to set, which was good for the sunburn that I had. It was getting late, and all of my friends were headed in for dinner. Storm was approaching. I could hear it rumbling in the distance. At first, I was racing the weather. Then I heard my dad whistle. It was something that all dads in the neighborhood did. And I don't know, I can't see you guys very well. I don't know if anybody grew up in a neighborhood where people would whistle to call their kids. and you know your dad's whistling, it's time to come in. It's just a little piece of 1950s America that still stood as the ground rules for children in my neighborhood. It was a little piece of the 1950s that said, get home now or fear death. If it wasn't a whistle, then it was somebody's mom just like screaming. And for me, it was a whistle, and it was my dad. I pedaled as fast as my little feet could. Then suddenly, I felt one of my shoelaces come untied. As soon as I felt the looseness on my shoe, I tried to stop, but my shoelace got stuck inside the gears of my bike. And I bit the concrete. Rain was coming down in giant drops. I looked around for help and was in the exact spot where I had created the Guinness World Record snowball 6 months earlier. I cringed. I tried to get up, but I was trapped under my bike with a sprained ankle. Headlights came down the neighborhood once again and stopped right in front of the driveway. I heard the car door open. I heard it close. The guy from 3 houses down was standing over me. The fading light of the sun shone around him like a halo. He was an angel sent by God. Or my grandmother. I'm not really sure how those things work. He was not annoyed. He barely said anything. Calmly and faster than I could even blink, he had my shoelaces untangled. Once I was on my feet, he asked me if I needed help walking home. I said, no. I was beet red in the face with embarrassment. I hobbled home, feeling a mix of emotions that would take me nearly 30 years to unpack. The thing that haunts me is not that I stuck a giant snowball in the middle of this guy's driveway, or that I was crying and bleeding in front of him. It was that I never asked what his name was. It could have been Bill, it could have been John, it could have been Gary, but for me, he will always be the guy from 3 houses down.
Mysterious. Okay, right before we get to our last storyteller, I want to tell you guys about a few things. First of all, the next, let's just say, is on March 16th, and the theme is home. So I hope you guys can come out for that one. That would help next year. 30th, we are doing a show called Fools. Let's just say Fools, and we are looking for people to tell stories for that one. I'm probably going to tell one because I have done many, many foolish things in my life. So if you guys have a good story, please come find Natalie or myself, or look at the Let's Just Say on Facebook and send us a message, and they'll get you in the lineup. And finally, at Go Comedy, they have a lot of great shows on Saturday and Friday nights at 7:30 and 9:30. They're kind of like a Who's Line Is It Anyway, like improv comedy. And on Sunday, starting at 7, there's great long-form shows. And at 9 p.m. for the Detroit Metro Improv people, there's an open mic, an open stage jam. So feel free to come join that. That's at 9 o'clock on Sundays. That's completely free. And so please come join any of those shows. And finally, our last word here of the evening is a writer, storyteller, and social entrepreneur. She is the founder of the Secret Society of Twisted Storytellers. And she is also the host of Detroit Performs Live from Mary Grove on PBS. Finally, Detroit Twisted Storytellers kicks off its 2023 season tomorrow night at 7 p.m. in Southfield at the Southfield Pavilion. So come early and shop around and then watch a great show tomorrow night. Please welcome Miss Satori Shakur.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Alex. Hold on, Pete. And thank you all. I am going to do a short excerpt from my stand-up storytelling concert called Confessions of a Menopausal Femme Fatale. Pete? It's the summer of '99. I'm living in Toronto at the time, and I am hot. 45, fit, with a six-pack, wearing crop tops, thinking, I've got to show somebody. Biological clock is ticking, pushing me in directions I don't want to go. I'm cooled up, man-eater, femme fatale. Hormones got me horny, feeling slutty, got me on Match.com. Me is Mr. Right, and I should have this baby. It's terrifying. I don't want to get pregnant. One child is too much. I'm not a good mother, and I don't want no STDs and such. I'm on God. 24/7. No sex, condoms, a pill. I get a pregnancy test every month, whether I'm having sex or not. Then one day out of the blues, I hear me saying to myself, you ain't got no business showing your belly button at 45. What? Who said that? Huh? I'm a twitch in between. I start to notice things like all of a sudden I'm hot. My skin hot, can't sleep. Night sweats, chills. I used to tweeze my facial hair. Now I'm wearing a beard. I'm not nice. Not anymore. I say exactly what's on my mind, and I'm becoming a bore. I've alienated a couple of coworkers, a few fake friends, and I'm shocked. I don't give a shit. Telling my mother my deepest secrets and fears. I'm surprised we haven't seen eye to eye on anything in years. When did we get so close? I'm calling her up and saying, Mom, I feel sad. Sad? Why? Don't know. Don't feel like myself. One minute I'm laughing, the next I'm crying. Cramps so bad they make me vomit. I'm gushing, buckets of blood and sweat and tears. My bed sheets look like a crime scene. And at night, my heart beats real fast, like it's gonna beat right out of my chest. It's scary. Oh, you you at the beginning of a change of life. I am. Well, that's what it sounds like to me. Oh, well, is this how you felt when you were at the beginning of the change of life? Tell you the truth, I don't remember. Don't remember. Well, then how do you know I'm at the beginning of the change? Oprah? She come on there in Toronto? Oprah's not scared, Mom. I'm scared. Scared of what? Scared that my life's not going to turn out the way I want it to. Scared that I'm going to be stuck in this dead-end temp job, stuck in this dead-end life. That's a good job you got as a secretary. I don't want to be a secretary. I'm a writer. I'm an actor. I want my own TV show. Oh. And Pete, you can turn this up, the volume up. Oh, well, did you say your heart be beating real fast at night? Yeah? You still smoking them cigarettes? No, I'm lying. She knows it. We hang up. I know it's bad. I want to quit. But I can't tell my mother I'm still in this toxic relationship. Truth is, I've been smitten by this monkey on my back since freshman year in college. Since cool filtered kings for 50 cents in the cigarette machine downstairs in the lobby of my dorm. I pulled a knob. I wish you'd a 20-pack. It took me a whole month to smoke it way back. Now I'm puffing on a pack a half a day in comedy. One when I wake up, 2 for breakfast at the bus stop, number 9 while I walk to the train on my way to work tomorrow. Downstairs with my nicotine tribe before I take the elevator up to my temporary secretary job where I die a slow death. Can't wait for my morning coffee break to blow smoke, get a light and commiserate. Go back upstairs where I think about quitting with every puff and drag. When my boss goes to a meeting, I'm back downstairs puffing on number 16 before lunch. Smoke a couple more on my way back to work. I go back upstairs, can't wait for my afternoon break. When I go back down and smoke another, boo-hoo, one left. I buy a pack when I get home. I smoke a couple more for dinner and watch my favorite shows on cable. My last one before bedtime, before I wake in the middle of the night to pee. Take a drag on number 33. That adds up to a pack a half a day and counting. I spend more time with cigarettes than anyone or anything. I feel lonely without them. What will I do with all the me time? 5 months later, New Year's Eve, and I'm partying just like Prince told us to. It's 1999, and just before the clock strikes 12, on impulse, I decide to quit. Right there, cold turkey on the spot. I mean, what if my mother's right? If I'm at the beginning of the change of life, this is my time to be the adventurous traveler, to climb mountains I never dreamed I could climb. This is my time to be whole and free, and besides, how bad can a little nicotine withdrawal be? Thank you.
follow that. Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. Once again, please check us out on Facebook and check out Go Comedies at gocomedy.net for their show times. There's a great sketch show running every Wednesday in March, and we will be back to see you on March 16th for Home. And until then, thank you, and we'll see you again soon.